The year was 1965. I was 10 years old. Life was simple enough in Weslaco, Texas, population 12,000. But any chance I got, though, I headed north to Rochelle, Texas, a place too small to even merit a population sign. My grandparents' place at Rancho Santa Rita was my escape. It was a world unto its own. 500 acres of dense thicket, a pre-Depression era general store, a schoolhouse, and the family graveyard. It was my playground. I could be a superhero if I wanted to be. There was nothing a superhero couldn't do. I could live forever. I didn't have to go far to find a real superhero. He lived next door. It was my cousin Gael. 25, tall, dark, and handsome, an intellect, an athlete, a devout Christian. He was a complete person. My parents knew what they were doing when they asked him to be my godfather, or as I saw it, my own superhero. I remember a Saturday morning in September, Gael and I headed into Kingsville in my grandfather's blue Studebaker, also known as Blue Heaven. And we went to a Texas A&I Kingsville football game. After that high-scoring game, we headed into Corpus Christi and continued our adventure. We went and bought farm supplies for the rancho. While there, we met with Carolina, Gael's girlfriend. We attended a showing of the Beatles movie Help and then grabbed a Whataburger as we headed out of town. As we headed out of Corpus Christi, the bright lights quickly turning into darkness, we headed down FM 665 towards Driscoll. The long stretches of straightaway asphalt tired the eyes. The occasional bends and turns added some interest to the ride, but otherwise it was boring. As we approached one final turn in Petronila, an oncoming truck cut the turn short and veered into our lane. Blue Heaven rolling over 3 times before coming to a rest. I remember going in and out of consciousness. I would come to and see Gael and I contorted in different positions, a spasm of pain on our faces, and pass out. I'd come to and I'd hear the still of the night ringing loudly in the dark, and I'd pass out again. "Hang on, champ," I'd hear him call. I came to, hearing people discuss the best way to pull Gael and I out of Blue Heaven without injuring us further. The windshield was removed, glass was swept away, and I was freed from the wreckage. My right arm was broken in 3 places. I had 2 broken ribs. Glass and metal had cut my face, my chest, and my legs. A heavy-set woman comforted me. The process to remove Gael proved to be much more difficult. Broken limbs, chest injuries, his legs tangled in mangled metal. I passed out. Coming to once again, I saw sheriff's deputies and the red flasher light spinning atop the ambulance. Gael was carefully placed onto the stretcher and loaded into the ambulance. I was wrapped in blankets and placed on the floor beside the stretcher. I reached up and placed my hand on Gael's arm. Organized chaos greeted us at the hospital. Medical assessment, code red, clothes being cut off, drifting off into the deepest sleep I'd ever known. I awoke to find myself in a hospital bed in the children's ward. My parents, grandmother, and older brother and sister hovering over me. My days in the hospital consisted of being medicated and sleeping for most of the day. On the 3rd day of my internment, a doctor came in and did a routine checkup and then asked to speak to my parents in private. It turns out that tests showed that there was some abnormalities with my blood and that it was best that I be taken to MD Anderson Hospital in Houston for further testing. I'll never forget the look on my parents' faces, the look of devastation, zombie-like. At the time, childhood leukemia was basically a death sentence. For all practical purposes, I was dead man walking. We left one hospital and entered another. I was pricked, probed, prodded, then pricked again over the course of 3 days. And then we waited and waited and waited. After several days, I was found to be extremely anemic, but other than that, quite ordinary. It had been a simple misreading of tests and x-rays, but rather be safe than sorry. Didn't they know about my superpowers? We left Houston, headed toward El Rancho to pick up my brother and sister, and then head on to Weslaco to resume life. I slept most of the way, somehow knowing after multiple stops when we arrived at the rancho that we were home. I sat up on the back seat and I saw the familiar sights. The remains of the general store, the school, and then as we pulled up parallel to the cemetery, I saw that there was a new grave with the bright ribbons on the coronas and dried flowers. Who died? I asked. I remember my mom turning around, her eyes full of tears. Instantly, I knew. Heroes don't live forever. One year later, Carolina and I gathered at the cemetery to place a single white rose on Gael's grave. It's a tradition we carry on to this day.